Downright scariest and terrifying real-life horror stories. This happened when I was around 8 to 9 years old. In the winter time, I often go up to my cabin so I can go snowboarding and skiing. I sometimes take trips up there with my mom. My parents have been split up since I was 4 and both of them started dating shortly after their divorce. When I was 6, my mom dated this guy, let's call him Jake, and we started going up to the cabin with him and his son, calling him Eddie, who was a year older than me. Both my mom and Jake have had a history of drinking. They weren't alcoholics, I would say, but they used to get drunk in front of us and black out on the couch, or just make a lot of noise until we forced ourselves to just fall asleep. I had this friend who had a cabin close to us. His name was Steve, fake name, and he would often come down to our cabin with his parents. The only kind of traumatic thing that happened at our cabin was that my mom locked us in my bedroom because we would sleep. Even though it was impossible because they were playing loud music and laughing. But that wasn't close to the other thing that happened. Jake's brother was visiting us together with his daughter, who was maybe 6 at that time. They had come from England so we could spend time at my mother's cabin all together. So, in the cabin there were 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Me and Eddie shared a room. Jake and my mom shared a room, and Jake's brother and his daughter shared a room. Then one day, we decided to drive down to Steve's parents' cabin. Steve and his little brother, who was 6 years old, was there, so we went up to the 2nd floor to look at some random movie. So now me, Eddie, Steve and the 6 years old were upstairs chilling for a couple of hours. When me and Eddie started to get tired, we went downstairs to ask my mom and Jake if we could leave. The 1 floor smelled like alcohol. I was used to the smell, so I knew they were drinking. I got into the living room and the first person I spotted was my stepdad, Jake. I walked over to him and noticed he was drooling, so I pointed it out and he started laughing. I didn't realize it was because he was drunk, so I laughed along. When I asked if we could go to our own cabin and sleep, he just slurred his words, so I couldn't understand anything. I asked my mom and she said okay. She called an Uber. Jake's brother Tommy hadn't drunken anything since he was with his daughter, so he took the car since there wasn't enough space in the Uber for him and his daughter. Around 20 minutes later the Uber arrived and there was a kind woman driving. When we stood outside and was waiting to get in, my stepdad acted super strange since he was drunk and it creeped Eddie out, so the woman tried forcing him to sit at the front seat next to her while me, Eddie and my mom sat at the back. My mom sat in the middle because Jake was mad that Eddie didn't want to talk to him. His words were slur, and he kept reaching his hand to the back to touch Eddie while he kept asking if he was okay. Eddie wasn't. I could see it. He was scared of his own father because of the alcohol. Jake was so angry when we arrived at our cabin that he just ran up into his and my mom's shared bedroom. While we were walking out of the Uber, Tommy and his daughter arrived. They went up into their room and me and Eddie went up to ours. While mom went to talk with Jake, we heard yelling and suddenly my mom came into our room and told us to run to the bathroom. Me, Eddie and my mom locked ourselves in the bathroom, and shortly after my stepdad walked out of his bedroom and started banging on the door screaming that he demanded to have his own son. He insulted my mom and tried breaking down the door. I had tears in my eyes. Same did my mom. When I looked over at Eddie I could see him having a big breakdown. Tears streaming down his face. Then we heard another voice. Jake's brother Tommy had heard all of the noise and went to check it out. Now there was a screaming match outside the bathroom door that I was locked in. We could hear them, and after a few minutes we could hear they started getting violent and pushing each other into the walls. Tommy was way bigger than Jake, so he was stronger. Then Tommy punched my stepdad in the face, causing him to get a black eye. Jake pushed Tommy into the wall hard, and while we were listening to their fighting my stepbrother was crying even more. Then we heard another voice. Tommy's daughter wondered where her father went and ended up seeing Tommy and Jake's fight. She started crying, so we opened the bathroom door. When we did, I ended up locking eyes with my crazy stepdad for a few seconds before he tried getting to the bathroom to talk to his son. Eddie yelled that he didn't want to talk and that he was uncomfortable with it. Jake got super angry that I even think he started treating both me and my stepbrother and my mom. When he was walking towards the bathroom, Tommy barged at him and pushed him into a wall. Tommy's daughter was still crying, so my mom called her and told her to get into the bathroom while the men were fighting. She got into the bathroom and locked it and sat there for half an hour listening to the fight. Then we heard a loud noise. Tommy had pushed my stepdad into the bed so he could sleep of the alcohol, and he ended up breaking a piece of the bed. In the process, he fell asleep and we could get out of the bathroom. Tommy and his daughter went to their room and locked it while me, Eddie, who was still crying, and my mom went into me and Eddie's bedroom and locked it. When we thought everything was over, we heard Jake getting up from the bed. He started screaming and banging on our door that he needed to see Eddie. My mom obviously didn't want him to, since he was a danger for us and himself. She held one finger in front of her mouth to show us we had to be quiet and told Jake that we were asleep and we could talk tomorrow. But Jake wasn't finished. He continued screaming about my mom having to call the cops since his brother Tommy was dangerous and that he should be locked up. After 30 minutes he fell asleep. Let's just say I was terrified and could sleep the rest of the night, and I was scared for life. Surprisingly, my mom didn't break up with him until about 2 years later, after she found out he cheated for the second time. Now I have a new stepdad, but I have major trust issues and I'm scared of drunk people. Ended what happened to Eddie.
I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, panicking. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. I used to live in Cornwall, UK. We moved into a bigger house as me and my sisters were growing up. As the renovation finished, I took to attic room. Having so much space, I felt like a king. It was a huge step for me because in the past I had problems sleeping alone. I put a double bed in at the middle back of the room, and at the front left corner, I had my fish tank, and the other corner, I had my TV, and in the middle wall, I had my wall clock. So when I wake up, I can see that clock as time passes. I woke up one morning looking straight at the clock, almost 11 a.m., sun shining, so my room was well bright. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, panicking. I wanted to scream, "Mom," I couldn't. That's when in the right corner, at the back, I can see someone looking at me that looks like a person, but almost invisible. It has some kind of mask on. The bottom half of its body was into the wall, and the other half was in my room looking at me, almost as if it was waiting for me to get up. I remember trying to force myself up using my left hand, but felt a sharp pain. I couldn't move at all as this thing went. I was able to get up. I was confused and shaken by what just happened and what that was. I remember looking online, and something came up as sleep paralysis, reading about it. But my experience I had was no way sleep paralysis. It was something else. I was wide awake. It was definitely something different. I've had other encounters growing up, especially with ghosts. Over time I became less scared and would accept what's happening around me. My latest experience is I'm in my 30s and moved to a city, and most nights, my wardrobe doors keep moving. It's not just my room, my daughter's room as well. I'll just see what happens. I'm trying not to interfere with it, as I believe it will just get bored and move on.
Creepiest, most unexplainable things people have witnessed in broad daylight. Our house is haunted, we think. There have been a few strange occurrences in the 18 months I have lived here. The vacuum turned itself on the other week. While my housemate was feeding the dogs, he heard the pedal click. The dogs were both in front of him. Personally, my weirdest ones were when my phone, which has rubber plugs to stop it sliding, and was placed on a gloss-painted surface, the phone just magically moved from one side to the other, shifting things along the way. Just couldn't keep my eyes off it. Checked the phone to make sure it wasn't on vibrate or something, but it makes no audible noise except when it nudged my keys, at which point it stopped moving. The other, which may or may not be anything to do with haunting, was when in the middle of the night I went to the bathroom and the toilet was covered in liquid tea, spilled over the edge onto the outside of the bowl and everything. So the reason for the maybe is that I was living with an ex who was having her monthly visit. There was some red in the bowl, so I assumed she was having a bad time, and man the *CK up on that situation. But she was adamant it was me who had done it, most likely due to embarrassment. But who knows? *ting poltergeist, maybe, ha 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 ha. Looked like something out of a horror movie for sure. Burned the rug in the end. Didn't want to ever remember that night.
I have hunted my whole life all over the US and never been scared or worried, but the hair on my arms and the back of my neck was standing up. In fall of 2016, while deer hunting on our lease in San Jacinto County in East Texas, all of us that hunt were there on Saturday night, while enjoying the campfire and drinking a bit. We heard our usual coyote serenade. However, about 30 minutes later, we heard a crazy loud guttural moaning howl. We all thought, damn, someone's Great Dane had run away and joined the pack. That was it, nothing else. Not another sound from them that night. We awoke the next morning to go hunt, and later that day, everyone but Kenneth and myself headed home. That evening, we didn't build a fire. We sat in the camp house and played cards with the generator running lights. About 11 p.m., we were ready for bed. I went out to pee and cut the power. As I did, I smelt an odor like a polecat had been just behind my truck and side by side. I thought nothing of it, so I went to bed, heard a few howls that night, but nothing seemingly strange. The next morning, Ken was gonna ride to his stand with me, so he went to the back of his truck to grab a bucket of sour corn for wild hogs. It was gone. Very strange, so we said oh well and headed out. As we turned the corner on an old logging road, there sat the bucket smashed against a tree, whatever had taken it. It couldn't get the lid off and smashed it. Well, there are supposed to be black bears making a comeback, maybe, but odd. So I drop Ken off and head to my blind, passing a small swampy area with some thick brush and cattails. I was hit with a smell like the one by our trucks. I thought hogs or a skunk and continued on. However, the whole time I was in the blind I felt like I was being watched. I have hunted my whole life all over the U.S. and never been scared or worried. But the hair on my arms and back of my neck was standing up. It felt odd. I knew something was watching me. As the sun got higher, the feeling left. I was okay. Then I got that feeling of being watched again. I texted Ken to see if he had seen anything. Absolutely nothing then. The smell came back on the breeze. Crazy feeling, but I stayed for some reason. Maybe I felt safe 10 feet above the ground with a .300 Winchester and a 10mm pistol, but at 11 a.m., I got out and headed to my side by side. About halfway there, I heard a soft whistle. I stopped and thought maybe Ken walked to me. Then I heard a limb break in the woods to my left. Then I swear I saw a brownish thing about a foot taller than me go off the creek bank into the creek bed and take off running toward Ken. I got to my side by side, pulled my pistol, and drove one-handed to Ken. He looked odd, and he said, "That 10mm ain't stopping what I think I just saw." "What did you see?" he said. "A damn brown bear or something hauling us down that dry creek bed." Now we both know East Texas has no such thing, and we just sat there, and both said people would never believe us. Well, we know what we saw. About 3 weeks later, right before Christmas, another guy that hunts with us came flying into camp after the evening hunt, shook up and shaking like a leaf. I asked what is wrong. He said, "Fuck it, y'all will make fun of me." I swore I wouldn't. I said I promise. He said, "As I was walking to my four-wheeler with my headlight, I heard a whistle in front of me, then back and to my right. I looked up, and I swear Bigfoot was about 20 yards on my right, between some plantation pines walking towards me. I hauled us back here. I even left my backpack on the ground where I was parked. He would not go back to get it till the next day and has not hunted that stand since. It's the truth, as crazy as it seems. I still worry a bit while I'm out there. I'm not scared because it doesn't seem like an evil creature, but curious. I'm never unarmed when I'm out there. Neither is Ken or Bobby, but the other four guys think we are full of shit, as guys do.
What's your creepiest and terrifying non-paranormal stories? There is a railroad that runs real close to my grandma's old house. I spent a lot of time at her house growing up and would venture up to the train tracks quite often. They were a bit isolated, as railroad tracks often are, and lots of people would do their running there. These tracks run over a road, in a bridge-like fashion, 12-mile road. If you've ever seen the movie 8 Mile, it's for miles down lol. Well, one day, this was during my sophomore year of high school, about 8 years ago. 3 friends and I are driving around town with nowhere to go. So we decide to go mess around on the railroad tracks. By the time we get there it's probably around 9:30 p.m. and the sun is just setting. We spend a couple hours up there just bullshastering. not doing anything illegal, but maybe being a little loud, as teenagers tend to be. Well, it's about 11 o'clock, 11:15, and we are making our way back to the stairs to get down to the parking lot and leave. This parking lot is chained off, so our car is just parked on the street right outside the closest house to the lot. As we're about 50 feet from the staircase, a man emerges from the top, which is covered in brush because the staircase and aforementioned lot are pretty rundown. This guy is wearing what look like cargo pants, with no shirt and a bald head, probably mid-40s or so. He starts kind of power walking in our direction, which doesn't bother us because, like I said, we were aware that people like to jog up there. After a few seconds, it is obvious he is heading right towards us, with no intention to jog around us. Let out a kind of friendly hello as to not appear dangerous to the jogger, because it was pretty dark out and all. Well, at this moment he starts to pick up speed, and is getting much closer to us. He also does not answer my greeting, which was pretty unsettling. We analyze the situation and start booking *** away from him. It is clear he is chasing us at this point. We are freaking the *** out. He probably got within 20 feet of us or so, but fortunately, we were fairly athletic kids. We make it to the point where the railroad overpasses the road and we climb down the side. We hop down a roughly 10 to 15 drop, but our adrenaline was absolutely pumping, so it felt like nothing. We get down into the well-lit street and take a second to breathe. At this point we are all ***ing ourselves. We are all anxious to get in the car and get the *** out, so we head around a couple blocks to our car. This is when we find out that our car is parked right in front of this guy's house because he is just pacing on the front lawn. Scared out of our minds, start approaching from the two possible angles we could. At any time we got close enough for him to see us, he started full out sprinting at us. By this point we are so over it and decide to call the police. We waited it out in some girl's garage who lived in the area. One of my friend's moms came and picked us up, and we all talked to the cop, who told us that they've dealt with this guy before and not to worry anymore. We left before the cops did, so not sure if they ended up bringing him in, or what. All I have been able to think about since that night is WHATTT the ***. Was he going to do to us if he caught up to us? What was his plan? Haven't been back to those tracks since.
I don't believe in ghosts as depicted in children's movies or books, but I know for a fact that spirits walk among us. When I was 20 years old, I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This event happened while serving in West Valley, Utah 2010. As a proselytizing missionary for the church, you're always paired with another missionary 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for safety and legal reasons. I lived with 5 other missionaries at this time on the 2nd floor of a church member's house. There was a staircase that went along the side of the house and down to the driveway where we parked our car. One night around 10 p.m., the missionary I was paired with had fallen asleep, and I decided to go down to the car by myself and grab something. Being by yourself as a missionary was strictly against the missionary rules. As I walked out the door knowing I would be by myself, I got the gut feeling, don't go down there alone. In my young, 20-year-old arrogance, I ignored the feeling and thought, I'm not afraid of anybody down there, I can handle myself. As I got down to the car, I felt as though somebody was watching me, anxiously looking around. I didn't see anyone. I kept scanning the area as I searched through the car for whatever I needed, prepared for whatever might happen. Or so I thought. As I stood up straight and closed the car door, I noticed a black figure standing on the other side of the driveway. It was roughly 9 feet tall. It didn't have a face, and the outline of it was fuzzy. And its shoulders were broad. The best I can describe is it looked like a large warrior. As I made my way back to the stairwell to head upstairs, I pretended to not see it but was terrified on the inside. I thought, maybe if I ignore it, it won't bother me. As I got closer to the stairwell, I could see it moving towards me out of the corner of my eye. I felt its presence directly behind me as I got the bottom of the stairwell. With every fiber of strength I had, I flew up the stairs like a heat-seeking missile. I was moving so quickly that I caught a few feet of air after I got up to the top of the stairs. As I reached for the handle to go inside, the door swung open. It was one of the 5 missionaries. His eyes were wide, and his face was pale white. He asked, "It was down there, wasn't it?" To which I quickly replied, "Yes." He explained that he had felt something was wrong and that he needed to go down with me, but had ignored the prompting. I explained what had happened while I was down at the car, and he apologized for not going with me. There were other instances of similar things happening at the house, but those are for stories for another time.